Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Basis Points, where we dive deep into the numbers and the stories that drive our economy and shape our world. We begin with an update on the U.S. elections as Vice President Kamala Harris widens her lead in the race for the White House after Tuesday's fiery debate with former President Donald Trump. While a new poll by Reuters IPSOS shows Harris now leading by 5 points, up from 3 to 4 points, voters continue to favor Trump when it comes to economic issues.
Obviously, everyone was waiting in anticipation after the debate to see where the polls would land. And what we're finding right now is a lot of stability, right? We find at the national level that Harris is in the lead relative to Trump. But on those key fundamentals issues like the economy and inflation, Trump ultimately has the lead. So, it's really Harris coming out of the debate with those vibes, with a lot of energy, doing a good job based upon a lot of the polling that's out there. But ultimately, Trump still holding on to those oh-so important fundamentals.
While Trump is ruling out another presidential debate ahead of the November 5th elections, Harris says otherwise.
I believe we owe it to the voters to have another debate. Because this election and what is at stake could not be more important.
Elsewhere in the world, the European Central Bank cuts interest rates for the second time this year. As expected, the ECB delivered a quarter-point reduction as economic growth falters and as inflation slows. They also lowered their 2024 growth forecast slightly to 0.8%, down from an earlier projection of 0.9%, citing the weaker contributions from domestic demand over the next quarters as the reasons for that downward adjustment. While investors are betting on a steady cycle of policy easing, the bank's governing council says that they aren't too keen to commit to a particular rate path.
I'm tempted to quote, Spanish, que será, será, because we have consistently said, and we repeat again, that we shall remain data dependent, and that is particularly justified in view of the uncertainty that abounds.
Still in the region, European Union lawmakers are calling for new rules around the use of dynamic pricing when it comes to selling goods online. This comes after ticket prices for next year's reunion shows of British legends Oasis were massively inflated, angering thousands of fans. The backlash has sparked probes into the official ticketing partner, Ticketmaster. At least 8 Irish members of the European Parliament are demanding that changes be made to tech regulations under the Digital Services Act to prevent similar situations from happening in the future. Dynamic pricing is a strategy in which businesses adjust prices based on the current demand for their goods and services. In other news, Alan Shaw, the former chief executive officer of major U.S. railway firm Norfolk Southern, has been terminated following an internal investigation. Shaw, who led the company through both challenging times and a high-profile derailment in 2023, is a significant figure in the transportation industry. Norfolk Southern says that this comes after Shaw violated company ethics policies. The chief legal officer, with whom he had a consensual relationship, has also been terminated. The company emphasizes that Shaw's departure is unrelated to their performance, financial reporting, or operational results. Shaw had been with Norfolk Southern for decades, leading the company through challenging times, including a significant derailment in Ohio back in 2023. He will be replaced by Norfolk Southern's Chief Financial Officer, Mark George. A closed-door court battle involving renowned media executive Rupert Murdoch is set to begin next week, and it's a case that could determine the future of both Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. Murdoch is seeking to alter the terms of the family's irrevocable trust to ensure that his newspapers and television networks stay under the control of his eldest son and chosen heir, Lachlan Murdoch. This strategy is designed to prevent any interference from 3 of Lachlan's more politically moderate siblings after the 93-year-old media mogul's death. The hearing will take place in a Reno courtroom away from the spotlight of New York Los Angeles, London, and Sydney, where Murdoch's extensive media empire operates. Documents in the case have been sealed, and those hearings are closed to the public. News organizations, however, are pushing for the court to unseal those records and to provide access to the proceedings, citing the significant public interest as the outcome of this case will affect thousands of jobs, millions of global media consumers, and the political landscape. Disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein is hit with new charges in New York. Weinstein, whose name has become synonymous with alleged sex crimes, is now facing fresh accusations that remain shrouded in mystery. While the specifics of the new case are still unclear, reports indicate that it's likely linked to alleged sexual crimes. Details of the indictment will remain sealed until Weinstein is formally charged on September 18th. Weinstein did not appear in court on Thursday as he was hospitalized for emergency heart surgery. These new developments come as Weinstein awaits a retrial in the city following an appeals court's decision to overturn his 2020 conviction for rape and sexual assault charges. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back to Basis Points. Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at the initial figures. I'm seeing a sea of green now. The PSE index is up, it's up at the 7,000 mark. We're at 70.53, up by 0.4%. All shares index up as well, up by 0.3% to 38.04. Now, all these sub indices are trading in the green. The gains in the PSE index are led by gains in the mining and oil counters in particular. That's up by almost 2% right now. Now, over in Wall Street, U.S. stocks posted gains as investors picked up badly hit tech stocks ahead of the Federal Reserve's meeting next week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 0.6%, while the S&P 500 went up by 0.8%. The Nasdaq gained 1% as shares of mega cap tech and semiconductor issues led the rally. Higher than expected producer prices data last month and the latest core inflation figures showing some stickiness reinforced expectations that the U.S. Central Bank will deliver a 0.25 percentage point interest rate cut at its meeting next week. Now, an upcoming forum is set to advance awareness and action towards a greener and more sustainable future. The Manila Bulletin Sustainability Focus Session will take place on September 24th at the University of Santo Tomas in Manila. Now, joining us in the studio to talk more about this is Philip Kuunhing. He's a columnist for the Manila Bulletin and the project head for this Sustainability Forum.
Morning, Maiki.
Hi, Philip.
Hi.
Thanks for being here with us this morning.
Thanks for having us. It was a really welcome opportunity for us to be able to talk about the focus session.
Yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so this focus session is your third installment. Can you tell us how this came to be?
Okay, it began really from talks I had with our president, Emil Yap, and Jordan Tan, who heads business development at the Manila Bulletin. So back in 2022, we felt there was a need for us to sort of like push awareness and consciousness about sustainability, because it was like a buzzword that was happening basically all around. And I mean, whereas in the West, like in the United States, Europe, it's pretty much ingrained already in the fabric of how society operates. Here in the Philippines, as you'll probably agree with me, hopefully, it's not really something that's trickled down effectively here in the Philippines. A lot of people still think of it as either pangmayaman lang, or they think of it in terms of bahala na the companies to push or promote sustainability. Pero kami, in our own sort of like situation, we don't really have to think about it. No? And
I agree with you on that
change.
end, but you're working to change that, and that's a fantastic thing. So let's broaden this discussion. Let's talk about sustainability in the context of business. We're in 2024. What does this look like now? Because in the past, it was only about CSR.
Right.
So like at present day, what does sustainability look like in the context of business, and why is it becoming a crucial part of modern business strategies?
Okay, what we like to see, and that of course we've been encouraged by here in the Philippines, is that if before you would think of things that were being done under the umbrella of sustainability as a CSR project of a company, that more often than not was like an afterthought of the company. It would be like something that they've set aside certain budgets for, or it's sometimes, if you want to really be cynical, it's like people would say it's the guilt factor coming in. They've made so much money, now they have to give back to society. Whereas with sustainability, what I personally like to see is that it's embedded now in the corporate DNA of the companies that we're talking about, that from the onset, they're already thinking of sustainability. No?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want a loan from the IFC, that needs to be embedded into your business strategy. Can you talk to us about how that has boosted, the demand for more sustainable stuff?
Okay, it's basically a company being more responsible now and seeing that they have to work and operate within a framework of creating a better future for everybody. I mean, people talk about people, planet, and profit. And for me, it's very easy to think people and planet because, of course, there's that responsibility. But I think it's also important to not downplay the idea of profit because if you don't make money, you're not going to be able to continue doing the good work. No, I mean, like somebody who's just going to be talking about people and planet in 2-3 years' time, they go bust. And so, what's all that goodwill going to amount to if you can't be operational? So the profit aspect is still important. And I feel that's where we are pushing that envelope in terms of people being aware that there are these companies who have sustainability ingrained in their corporate DNA, and that it would be nice if the public would appreciate better what they're doing and also change their attitude about thinking of sustainability as something that's distant from them personally. We often talk about how these companies operate in the Philippines, and we talk about resilience, and we talk about like how the Philippines is so vulnerable to natural disasters. And in the end of the day, if you have that attitude of like, it's not about me, kawawa the people, because in the end of the day, the ones who are most affected when there are these natural disasters are those people at that demographic, and not the people, I mean, you or I, maybe, there's a bagyo or there's a flooding happening in the street, we're still somewhere safe in our homes, whereas the other people are the ones who are really suffering. And yet they're the ones precisely who don't understand or don't appreciate where sustainability is coming from in terms of trying to give you a template for a better life for them.
Yeah, we need to take a practical approach on multiple levels. I mean, it's not just with our generation, it's with the lower generations, the younger generations as well. But there is this notion that sustainability is expensive. How do we quash this notion? How do we, not just the large corporates, we want them at the MSC level to know that, sustainability is profitable. Can you give us examples of businesses
honestly, you can't quash it completely. I mean, what you were saying that we have to quash it. I mean, there is that aspect that sustainability can be something that requires a little bit more investment, no? And so the investment does require that you have the money on hand to be able to do it, especially if you're talking about like real estate. If you're talking about real estate, to have sustainability features within a certain real estate project, the notion is that there is a little bit more that has to be invested to create that accreditation with LEED, Verde, or with EDGE or WELL. No? But what we're trying to do is push the envelope in terms of at least people appreciating that if there are companies doing this, they're doing it with a purpose, and that hopefully down the line, there's a way for us to make that become more affordable and make that more accepted by people, and so that there is the demand to have that as part of what any company in the real estate industry will have to incorporate in their operations. No?
But we need to see the good examples so we know what to copy. So going back to the forum, can you talk to us about the companies that are participating in the forum and what are their sustainability issues?
Just to correct,
what are their banner initiatives?
Yeah, to correct, what we have is the focus session this September 24th at the UST. We began 2 years ago with something called the Manila Bulletin Sustainability Forum. And that one was a more general kind of forum where we have very different companies talking about sustainability so people understood or appreciated it comes in very different formats and different guises actually. No? And so we will have a third forum this November at the University of the Philippines, but the one I'm here to talk about is the focus session on the 24th, because this is where from the requests of several of the people who had participated in the forum previously, they were saying, is there something a little bit more focused that we can also create within the context of sustainability? So this one on the 24th is about renewable energy and green buildings specifically, because when we partnered with UST, we were asking which colleges could actually be sort of like the main bulk of the audience that we would be able to generate for that one day. And so they were offering the College of Architecture and the College of Engineering. So given that those are the two colleges we were going to be interacting with primarily, we felt that we would push really like SDG 7, 9, 11, and 17, which have direct relations to clean and affordable energy, to, my código, no? Industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and to sustainable cities and communities.
What's the target audience of this event?
It would be
can
student.
anyone just
anybody can go, but
Anyone
yes,
can go.
of course, we wanted to sort of guarantee for the speakers who would come in that there would be a certain sort of groundswell of audience that would be coming from these particular colleges. No? So we're really happy. We have 7 speakers coming from private companies. That's Arthur Land, Ayala Land, we have Mega World, we have SMDC, and we have RLC Residences. And then we have Shell Philippines, and we have Aboitiz Power talking on behalf of the energy aspect. And then we wanted to broaden the scope of what's being talked about. So we asked Mayor Abby Binay to talk about how sustainability can also be approached from a complete LGU aspect. And we have Lyle Pasco of Human Settlements talking about the Pasig River Redevelopment Project. And then we have speakers like William T., who's an architect known very much for sustainable design, and Sheila Lobien because of the Lobien Realty, because we also wanted to be sort of talking about inclusivity, that a woman can set up her own real estate firm, be successful, and also be part of the whole industry.
What are some of the challenges that businesses face when they want to become sustainable? What are some of the, I mean, it's different across the board depending on the size
challenges
and scope
will change
and industry,
from,
but basically, what are the initial hurdles that businesses need to overcome?
One hurdle I can imagine they would encounter right away is like the older generation who's involved in the operations of the company yet and still has some kind of veto power, because they might feel it's additional expense that wasn't really something that they were used to, and so they were saying, why do we need this now as part of our corporate
They didn't have it in their operating expenses.
Yes.
So what would you say to them now to help them convince this older generation that they need to go green?
Well, it's not me to convince them. It's the younger generation within that company
what would you
to
do to
them.
help them convince?
I think they have to really push the argument that you don't lose profitability. And when you're being conscious or being sort of helpful in thinking thinking people and thinking planet, you don't necessarily have to forgo profitability. And I think one of our speakers from our first forum from BPI, Joanne Ayala, was really pushing that as companies have ESG agendas, she was saying it can't just be ESG, it's got to be ESG plus P, meaning profitability. So that's very important for any corporate company. So if you can incorporate all of that, and she was actually very pleased to be reporting to us that in terms of people servicing their loans from BPI that have like sort of green aspects attached to them, it was the companies who had sustainability that were actually servicing the loans most efficiently. And so it sort of debunks that notion that if you're going to have sustainability as part of your corporate agenda, you're going to end up losing money. No?
And with any initiative, collaboration is key.
Yes.
What would you like to see in terms of collaboration, not just from the private companies, from public-private partnerships, from the government?
From the public partnership, this is like some sort of thing that my own pet peeve about sustainability here in the Philippines, which I know a lot of people feel, yes, they agree with me, but then nothing's really done about it, is one pet peeve I have about sustainability here in the Philippines is that the conversation still always couched in English. Okay. That you expect it to trickle down, but it doesn't go. You can't expect it to trickle down if you're not going to create a language of sustainability that's in Filipino.
Correct.
And I think it's not us in the private sector who should be able to do that, because if we did that and then the government says you're using the wrong term, that's not the term we sort of like validly accept as what would be the equivalent of sustainability, and it doesn't work. So I think, and this is my pipe dream, maybe the Department of Education, NCCA, maybe the DILG, whoever, they all get together, collaborate, and then they come up with a language that would be Filipino and sustainability. Because I think like in Indonesia, there's probably a lot of terms in Bahasa that are referring to sustainability. In Japan, you're not going to all of a sudden say something in Japanese and say sustainability. You're going to say something that's still Japanese. Yeah.
Key,
so I think that's key. Yeah. So I think that's key.
And understanding.
And I think that that hasn't happened yet here in the Philippines. And a lot of people attribute it to the fact that there's that ready excuse of the Filipinos are fluent in English. But I don't think that's even true anymore nowadays, as it was maybe a few decades ago. I think conversational English, yes, we're still fine. And I'll be the first to say I'm guilty of the same thing as well in terms of not being that fluent in Filipino. No, but I still think that if you were going to expect sustainability to be understood by the people who actually are going to be affected by it most, then you have to make the effort to create the language in Filipino to be able to explain it to them properly. And like, you can say, gusaling verde, and that's a green building, but what does that mean? What does that connote? You can say it and people will just think in terms of like, it's the color of the building, or it's like something, a term that I just hear, but are they gonna, how do they understand also contextually what that means? And then it becomes really acceptable within, for example, Filipino conversation. When you say gusaling verde or something, that there's certain parameters that are already accepted within what that terminology refers to. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Communication is key. Lots of barriers to break, but we can do this. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Now that was Philip Kuunhing from Manila Bulletin. Now we're taking a quick breather. Basis Points will be right back. Welcome back to Basis Points. Here at home, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is expected to issue an executive order banning all Philippine offshore gaming operators, or POGOs, within the next 2 weeks. This according to the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission Undersecretary Gilberto Cruz. The PAOC chief says that while the definitions and general concepts of what will be prohibited are already in the draft, the details on the implementation are still being ironed out. The Senate is working to fast-track legislation that will enforce President Marcos's directive to ban on POGOs. Now, this comes after President Bongbong Marcos announced in his third State of the Nation address that POGOs are no longer allowed to operate in the country. This directive is seen to affect roughly 27,000 workers employed by this industry. Now, more layoffs hit the tech industry as Microsoft announces a third round of job cuts from its gaming business. Microsoft is laying off approximately 650 employees, mainly in corporate and support roles, across its gaming unit. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer explains that these cuts are part of a strategy to position the business for long-term success, particularly after the company's massive $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard. The latest round of cuts brings the total job losses in Microsoft's gaming division to 1,900, which is about 8% of its workforce since the consolidation of the Call of Duty makers' buyout. Now, the reductions come amid slow industry growth and rising game development costs, with Sony PlayStation also announcing a similar cut of 8% of its global workforce. Now, space history is made once again, this time by civilian astronauts from SpaceX's Polaris Dawn mission, who've achieved the world's first ever private spacewalk. Tethered to the Crew Dragon spacecraft, billionaire Jared Isaacman exited the capsule first, followed by SpaceX engineer Sarah Gillis a few minutes later. Although the spacewalk was planned to last around 30 minutes, preparation and safety procedures extended the total time to about 2 hours. This milestone is part of Elon Musk's company's latest and most ambitious attempt to push the limits of commercial spaceflight.
Dragon SpaceX vent complete.
Valve open.
Get a good seal of the hatch.
Before we go, 2 pizza restaurants in the Philippines have been named among the 100 best pizzerias in the world. Makati-based Crosta Pizzeria has climbed to 12th place in the latest ranking by the Italian website 50 Top Pizza, and it's the second best in the Asia-Pacific region. Meanwhile, Mano, also located in Makati City, has secured the 70th spot on the list. The top spot goes to Una Pizza Napoletana in New York. And that's it for Basis Points. I'm Maiki Oreta. We'll be back next week for more news on the financial markets and more. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel, always on top.